So welcome to our fourth session on effective communications for Caribbean civil society organizations. And more specifically, this is targeted towards capacity building and knowledge products to enhance the use and uptake of the Grenada National Ecosystem Assessment. Very quickly, this is funded by Jeff through the Jeff IW Eco project, which is implemented by UNEP. Right, and this workshop and this small project supports the Grenada NEA, where we're trying to uptake and use the ecosystem and ecosystem valuation information in the research product. Let it be used by a range of stakeholders towards improved natural resources management. Right now, we're working on one part of this project, which is this workshop, and then later on, starting from December, we'll be looking to try to get the ball rolling on a citizen's guide to the NEA, right? So we're looking to build general communications capacity, but also focus on using the environmental and economic information in the Grenada National Ecosystem Assessment. And apart from just doing training on communications, we're actually trying to develop communication strategies, which we are hoping you all will begin to implement elements of. I mean, perhaps as soon as this workshop is finished, depending on your timing. But we also, under the bigger Grenada NEA project, possibly around March, April next year, we'll also try to assist with the implementation of this, these strategies that we are developing right now. Basically, the strategies we are focusing on, for those who have been here in previous sessions, we've gone through a process where we did an initial focus group of our civil society stakeholders and some of our authors based in Grenada as to what topics they would like to communicate on. And we've gone through a series of steps, and right now what the communication strategies are focusing on, we have one campaign on mangrove value. And then up until the last session, we were tweaking another one, which had a soil vegetation focus. And my phrase, looking to make debushing a bit more sustainable. And for anybody who is not familiar with debushing, it's basically what the maintenance crews do along roadsides, etc., in terms of vegetation removal for general maintenance purposes. It's not being done in the most eco-friendly way possible. And basically, we are trying to communicate with them in terms of how to do this better to ensure there's some vegetation left towards the reduction of soil erosion, sedimentation, etc. So very quickly, we will actually be going almost immediately into these two breakout groups again. And what we've done over the last couple of days has focused on figuring out what kind of messages we want to communicate to these to the different target groups. And what we did last time is we also shared, for instance, some statistics and little bits of information from the Grenada NEA that we're hoping to utilize, noting that it's not necessarily a perfect fit. And then when we actually roll out the campaign, we may pull in information from other areas, but we are also trying to pull in bits and pieces directly from the Grenada NEA. What we actually also found out through talking to a range of stakeholders is, in particular, as it pertains to the possible debushing, better debushing campaign we're trying to implement, there may be actually possible follow-up. So there might be a nice synergy that if we try to build awareness about why we need to do debushing better with the target groups, which would include the debushing crews, their supervisors, etc., there is another project that may be able to actually do some training with them. So there's a very nice possible synergy and follow-up that can happen. So we're quite excited by that. And once we get these campaigns kind of collated, let's see what we can do next year to actually bring these to life. So with that, I think I will turn over to Michelle to talk about what we're doing today. Thanks.
Thanks, Natalie, and good morning and welcome again, everyone. Just put my slides here. So just a quick reminder for those who have not joined us before, we do have some community agreements that kind of govern the way that we interact with each other during our time together. these are them. We ask that you participate actively and fully by sharing experiences and answering questions where you can, limiting our contributions to 2 to 3 minutes to give others a chance to chime in, limiting distractions wherever possible, communicating when we have to step away, especially in small groups, listening to our colleagues for understanding and being respectful even when we disagree. Again, these are open for discussion, and if anyone would like to add anything, you are welcome to. You can always post in the chat that you think we need a new community agreement and we can handle it at that point. On tap for today, we will be covering refining our targeting and messaging using the data available to us. Introduction or reintroduction. I'm sure everyone here has had some dealings or some cause to develop communication products and platforms in the past, which is why I say reintroduction, and then exploring how to effectively use products and platforms to meet our campaign goals and objectives is what we will focus on today. Just a quick reminder, as we are about to head into small groups, we would like you to further work on refining your key messages. So this checklist is a reminder of what are some key criteria that your key messages should have. Yes, Natalie?
No, after you're done, before we go into breakout groups.
Okay, sure. We want to be clear. We want to use conversational language and stay away from jargon. We want to express what we have to say as briefly as possible. You want it to be compelling. We want to speak to the values and concerns of the target audiences we've identified. Where possible, if there is an alternative that is not as appealing, we want to contrast the difference between what we are promoting and what is being promoted, or the alternate of what we're promoting. We want to juxtapose the two and essentially say why what we are asking people to do is better for them and better for the environment. We want to make sure that everything that we are saying in our key messages and our tailored messages is fact or based in evidence, verifiable and realistic. Yes. And so as we head into small groups, we want to consider the following, right? In terms of targeting, we want to look at what new or existing communications data we have available to us. So how do the people who we are targeting receive information? What do we know about the way they receive information? And how can we refine our target, the way we target them with that in mind? And then in terms of messaging, we want to know, what do we know about our issues with respect to scientific evidence-based statistics or quantitative data, as well as qualitative data that will allow us to further legitimize messages we've crafted. So Natalie has put together some notes for us. In the last session, the Mangrove group did get a chance to review the notes Natalie made and apply any applicable scientific data to their messaging. The debushing group did not have that opportunity, and so we will be tackling that right now as we go into small groups, while the Mangrove group will focus primarily on fine-tuning targets and fine-tuning messaging based on the feedback that was received in the last session. Natalie?
I just want to say a big thank you to all of you. This is intense. I am acknowledging that we're doing really hard work and really picking your brains and our own brains to come up with the messages and strategies and so forth. Just a huge thank you for sticking with us. And I encourage you, to still try and contribute as much as you can, but basically thanks. That was it before we go into groups. Thank you.
Okay, Anastasia, you can put us into groups now.
Hi, good morning, everyone. For those of you who I have not had the opportunity to meet from the other group. So I will quickly present on what we discussed in breakout group 1. So firstly, we discussed where we went over who the target groups were. So one of our target groups, we had 2, and one was supervisors of crew and the crews themselves, as well as unit managers and administrators who are running the crews. So those were the 2 target groups that our key messages would be directed towards. So I will, Michelle, is it okay to go ahead and share the screen with what we were discussing?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So we did have a little bit of changes being made to our streamlined key messages. Our first message, which initially was land clearing and debushing needs to change. Don't cause the soil to wash away by the way we chop each day. That was the original message. But the discussion in our group was that we can simplify it a bit. So we changed it to land clearing and debushing needs to change, prevent soil erosion by the way we chop each day. We also recognize that for the key message number 2, there was very specific figures that I don't think was backed scientifically. So we decided to scrap that one. We kind of reworked streamline the key message number 3, and we wanted to make it, pop. So we started with save your back, debushing is backbreaking, save our future, don't cut solo. And we indicated that save our future, don't cut solo could possibly be a sub message instead of part of the main message. Then for the key message number 4, debush, don't desoil, and save yourself toil. We still were at the end of the group, we still were a bit, on the fence about the use of the word toil, as we recognize that our target group may not necessarily connect with it or understand what it means. So that is something that requires further discussion. We also refined the second part of that message, soil regeneration takes decades. We initially had a section where we had potentially to put the number of years, but since we did not have actual figures to back that up, we decided to go with decades to be more general and in a sense, a little bit more broad. And I think, there was some discussion about there being a bit of, similarities between message 1 and 4. So that is also another area where we may need to have a little bit more discussion. But we also noted that we need to connect with people personally. We need to ensure that the messages are not, reaching people, trying to appeal to their altruistic nature and, touching them where they would feel it personally and feel that need to act. So I think I covered everything that we discussed. Please let me know if I missed anything or if anything needs further clarification. Thank you.
I think you did a great job of covering what we discussed, Crystal. We did say at the end that we really wanted feedback on from the other group on the word toil, and also a point that I raised was whether or not the people we're targeting understand the term or phrase soil erosion, right, on its face without further explanation. So we would love feedback from the other group on that. We did not spend a lot of time on our targets, but did I did leave our group with the thought that we need to start thinking about what connections, if any, we have to our targets and how we leverage them. Yes. So feedback from the Mangrove Group on our new messages and choice of language, and how do you think it will saddle with your fellow Grenadians?
Michelle, can I start?
Yes, you can.
Okay. This subject has been a pet peeve of mine for the last 2 decades. And I am afraid in my view, there's a critical component that's missing from the messaging here. Why is debushing a problem? Because traditionally the cutlass was used, and it is difficult to cut bush with a cutlass and leave 2 or 2.5 or 3 inches of vegetation growth. So invariably you're cutting, when you finish it's bare earth. Now, that has changed. I'm not sure if you all are aware of it, the non-Grenadians. That has changed over the last, I don't know, maybe 6, 8, 10 years. They now also use weed whackers. You all aware of that?
Yes, Terrence, we are aware, but what we raised in the last session, because I noticed it here in Trinidad, so I put it to the group as to whether or not it also happens in Grenada, right? We will have like one person in the crew with the weed whacker, right? And then you have 4 with cutlasses.
Right. Okay.
Right?
So I wouldn't get into that minutiae. I just wanted to make sure that that was understood. It's both cutlassing followed by weed whacking. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Now the thing is, my view on the soil erosion, I think soil erosion is an acceptable term. I don't think it's going to be above the heads of many people, even ordinary, simple working class people. My own personal view. So I think that is appropriate. However, there is an element of this that I'm not seeing here. If we were to do some research, make some effort over a period of time in regrassing areas where, now if you have, we call pick a bush, or we have this, I can't remember the name of the plant. I know it has wild tambran. There are some thorny, woody little shrubs that grow at the side of the road that you cannot trim or cut or maintain using a weed whacker. You have to use a cutlass. And then there are rocks and there are roots and all of this kind of thing. That's a mortal enemy of the weed whacker. And that is a justification for continued use of the cutlass. If we were over a period of time, it may take 10 or 15 years. Why can't some of our brightest plant biologists come up with a species of grass or species of grasses that can thrive in the rainy season and that can survive the dry season? And we go we're not only cutting and so forth, but we're replanting all the verges and every road in Grenada. That would be the ultimate goal.
But if
to facilitate the use of weed whackers, in other words, 95% of the time, instead of maybe 60% cutlassing and 40% weed eating or whatever it is, the overwhelmingly predominant method of maintenance of the grass verges on the roads would be through weed eaters. We all know once you continuously cut in our island societies, once you keep cutting with a weed whacker, right? The grasses and sometimes even stuff like lawn grass starts to grow and so forth. And it makes it easier and easier to maintain. So that's just my suggestion in a way. More than just how you cut cutlass versus weed whacker and so on. Investing in research and development of grass material that can be replanted to facilitate maintenance. And secondly, very quickly, what is done with the cuttings? I don't know if this came up in your discussion, and my apologies, I missed unavoidably on Tuesday, so I wasn't in discussion. The question I pose is, what is done with the grass cuttings? Why can't we collect these grass cuttings? So what happens is, invariably they stay 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days at the edge of the road until finally they organize a truck or van or whatever
To pick it up.
Suppose
Yeah,
we were to compost, suppose we were to have a parallel composting project.
So we had that discussion on Tuesday, Terrence, and I think you raised very valid points, right? That we would have, to some degree, discussed on Tuesday as a group. If you scroll up, can you scroll up for me, Crystal, really quickly? So we, all the way up, yeah? So we discussed some looming questions and concerns, and then also what areas of debushing we wanted to focus on for the first phase of this campaign, right? So not saying anything you have raised is invalid or doesn't need to be addressed, but for the first phase of the campaign, we're talking about targeting the supervisors and crews and the people who manage them initially. And so the messaging that we're developing speaks specifically to that. There was a heavy emphasis in the group on wanting to focus on soil erosion for this first phase, soil erosion, and making a personal plea, as personal a plea as possible to the people doing the work. And so that's how we came to what we came to. But what you have noted is certainly valid and worth considering for future phases of the campaign. Yeah.
Sure.
Joseph, Renrick, you had your hand up for some time. Do you not want to make your point anymore before we go on to Joseph really quickly?
Well, I was just trying to follow the flow of the argument in terms of the solutions that were being provided.
Okay.
The one point was made was, okay, why don't we plant this species of grass with thorns? Remember, this is something that has happened. That same ideology, that same thinking has led to invasive species being unleashed. So you have to be careful when you make those broad-based type solutions where you say, okay, you know what, to prevent soil erosion, let's plant a species of grass that is not native, right? So now you're creating a problem with a solution.
So just let me
Reddick, I'm
intervene
sorry,
here.
I may have been misunderstood. I would never suggest planting a non-native. There's a grass called kush or vetiver or whatever. They are local species that can be used. I was not at all suggesting creating a problem.
What I'm saying is taking a broad-based approach has been happening for decades and decades. And then we realize that a solution led to a problem. So one farmer might say vine is very good for cattle. And now you have vine throughout the island that is not only providing a feedstock for animals.
All right, guys,
Yeah, I was going to say,
so let me intervene.
That's why I lowered my hand.
Okay.
All right, let me intervene first, Michelle. Just to say that, as Michelle indicated, this is one phase of a campaign. And as I had alluded to, we may be able to actually link up with a project that's in progress to do some actual training with experts who can possibly advise on other aspects, including planting some other species, certainly, of course, native, non-invasive, but that is a bit beyond our current scope. So we're going to have to move on. I think I see Joseph, but go ahead, Michelle. You are facilitating. I butted in.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Natalie. Natalie makes a good point that I was just about to say. We're going too deep, guys, in this. So Joseph, if you have a quick point, just a minute or so, because we want to turn over to your group.
I wouldn't say all I wanted to say, but just to say that the tree that Terrence was talking about is called a
Joseph,
briar tree.
you're going down the rabbit
Taking
hole.
us
We told you not to
deeper.
go down under.
Hello?
What's the tree, Joseph? What's the tree? Quickly.
The tree of the name of the tree is briar picker tree. The one time when he spoke about briar.
All right, okay. The botanist and me will talk to you all separately on it, but not for now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Briar.
Thank you,
Because
Joseph.
I had a plant in my own yard, but I also want to say in terms of soil erosion,
Mhm.
maybe in brackets we could have the word lost forever, soil erosion, so that the ordinary people could understand.
Okay.
You have
I
soil
like
erosion,
that.
you have
I
lost
like
forever.
that. Making the effort to make it more approachable.
Right.
Even though that maybe goes against what Janelle was trying to do by taking some words out. But I do like making it more approachable with that. So we can discuss that further. I noticed we didn't get any feedback on the word toil and how it lands in terms of local parlance. Maybe you guys could just drop some notes in the chat if it sits well with you, if it doesn't. Let's turn over, Natalie, to your group so we can hear what you worked on.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask Aditi to share, but I will talk only because I did not manage the time well. And it would not be fair to me, to Aditi, for me to ask her to rapporteur. So I am the one trying to report on the not so good job that I did. Yeah. All right.
Don't be so hard on yourself. I'm sure you did a great job. Go ahead.
Yeah. So just to go back to key message number 1, we actually didn't change our messages so much. We actually ended up talking a little bit more about the targets and how we can best communicate with the particular target, which in this case, for this subgroup would be the minister. As you recall, we had another group which was targeting community groups to understand about mangroves. So actually, we didn't change too much here. If you want to go to the next slide, DT. Message 2. Right, great, thanks. A good point that someone made, I can't remember who, is that when we're communicating to the minister, we have to recognize that we need to give them a cost-benefit analysis. If we protect the mangroves, the developer who wanted to build the apartment building loses out, you know? So we have to, when we're communicating, well, and you can correct us if we actually need to be not considering other people's point of view, but it was suggested that when we are communicating that we need to understand that they have to balance things, and we need to show that we understand that, but that our argument or justification makes more sense, whether it's in the long term, whether it saves us more money or anything like that. Can I ask for your feedback on that immediately? I mean, do we show that we know both sides of the story, or what do we show?
Absolutely. It's very important to, especially when dealing with people who are accountable to other groups of constituents, right? It's really important to show them that you have considered the entire picture, because all day what they encounter are people who only see things from their point of view, and so are not willing to compromise or show them alternatives that work for more of the people that they represent. And we have to keep in mind that their job, in order for them to do anything, they have to stay in office, right? And they have to meet the needs of as many people as possible. So it is very smart to make sure you are also referencing and drawing into context where what you're asking falls in the greater scheme of their mandate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, great, thanks. Key message 3, I'm not sure if we made any changes there. No, we didn't really make any changes, but we did have some comments that, again, we need to focus on community and community benefits. And then interesting, so I know our second target group is so far, we haven't changed it or anything, is in fact community members, to get them to understand why saving the mangroves is important so that they can then communicate to the minister. What was pointed out is that in some cases, in some of the areas that are kind of hotspots, then the community actually may prefer the development versus the mangrove. So we do in fact need to talk to them to also give them the big picture, and that sort of balance as well. So as our second target group, we really need to consider that they have needs too that might benefit from development. Yeah, so that was a point that I thought was good. Exactly what we said before in terms of cost benefits. There was a point raised that it's not only, we can also try to address softer values, perhaps appeal to the minister, not only economics, but we're talking culture, and these were your boy days, running around, catching crab, that kind of thing, the sort of culture and heritage aspects. And then building on the cost benefit, what one of the chapters, for example, in the Grenada NEA does is talk about scenarios. So when we try to present to a minister, for instance, it's like, if we do this in 20 years, why will happen, so to speak. So long game. If we are giving cost benefit analysis to a minister, for instance, we can tell him that, okay, so yes, in the short term, you can, okay, like, yes, this development might do X, but if we protect this mangrove, we might be able to access conservation funding, and the people who would have benefited from the development can now benefit in another way from the funding that we would get because we conserve. So we show them how we can kind of integrate everything. Does anybody want to add to what I've said?
Okay, I have a question. So in the scenario situation, right? Is it possible, are the scenarios all like 20 years down the line, or is anything more immediate? Because I'm just thinking, if I am the minister, right? 20 years from now, I'm not going to be in office. So, you really have to tell me why I care about what happens 20 years down the line, when 20 years down the line, I'm not accountable to the same people I'm accountable to today.
All right, so I'm going to answer before Renwick speaks. So Brian, let's get rid of the chapter you're working on because scenarios are a bit actually long game. So yeah, most scenarios you start at least 50 years or so, which then which of course is very relevant to the Grenada NEA. Scenarios are a big part of it, but I'm hearing your point, and that maybe perhaps it's the community groups that we need to focus that type of information on, so that they think about their children and their grandchildren, because you are right, it's not as applicable to the minister. Sorry. So
or,
I think somebody.
I mean, it may be, I'm just asking if there's a different angle to come at it, to make it relevant to what they're doing right now. And maybe
Sure.
Brian has a different perspective on that, since he's working on the scenarios. Feel free to chime in, Brian, and we'll take
Renwick
You
after.
make a perfect point that the minister you need to know your target audience and know what motivates them personally. And Renwick made this point very well in our group. Understanding what motivates them, you're right, is the next election, is whatever. So in communications with the minister, I would suggest focusing on that. Here's why you care. Now, the scenarios we're doing in the Grenada NEA are done for a slightly different purpose, or a lot different purpose. And those will be different. Those are a longer term sort of projection. But certainly certainly the knowing your audience and what motivates them and targeting communications at that is a critical component.
Great. But I mean, scenarios are, of course, a very important tool. It's how we package it and to whom it's most relevant. Yeah.
exactly.
You're not getting out of work, Brian.
If I may interject, what if you communicate with the minister and then the minister calls a town hall meeting? And in this town hall meeting, 4 coal producers show up.
Mhm.
And their agenda is to expand their operation, to use more of the mangrove to make more coals. Now, if you communicate right, then the minister could be equipped with a strategy, a plan, and he could say to them, well, you want to cut down more mangrove, but I have a solution for you. We will go after climate fund money that can get you not cutting down more coals, but divesting your energies into this other stream of business. So I'm thinking, if you give the minister beforehand what he stands to lose, he stands to lose the ability to support these coal producers, these people who want to go further into the mangroves. Then he knows, oh, you know what? I can tap into this climate fund money and help these coal producers to go into making coals out of coconut shells. For instance.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Renrick. You do want to arm anybody that you want as a champion of the work and to help you move your agenda forward, right? You absolutely need to arm them with all the information they need to sway the people they're accountable to, right? If you do that work for them, one, they'll love you because they don't have to do the work, and it makes it much easier for them to buy into what you're saying. So no argument here, Renrick. That's an awesome part of the strategy that should be built in, right? Are you doing that through policy briefs, issue briefs? Are you doing it through case studies? Are you, using those things in face-to-face meetings? Are you communicating it over dinner? Like how many different ways can you get those messages to the minister and arm and prepare him so that it works out better for everyone involved? That's kind of what we're going to look at next when we talk about products and platforms. But great points from both Brian and Renrick. And thank you, Natalie, for indulging me in a few questions to that end. I would like to get some feedback from the Soil and Veg group, the debushing group, about what Natalie shared. We just have 1 or 2 minutes for feedback. Oh, interesting comment from Wendy. Can the government take can the government take an environmentally sensitive development perspective so developers know upfront that the environment has to be considered in any development project? Does it have to be one or the other? It absolutely does not have to be one or the other. I think they can, but they have to be willing and have to have the vision that there can be environmentally sensitive development. Right? So I guess it depends on the politician on the government's, who's in government and how they see it. Yeah. Any thoughts, no thoughts from the debushing group on what the mangrove group has come up with in terms of fine tuning their targets? If not, we're gonna go into our break. It's time for our break, right, Natalie?
Hang on. Weren't you going to talk about products and platforms first? Or we can take a break now if you think, no. I don't think our brains are that tired. Perhaps you can go into the plenary, the products and platforms.
Sure, that's going to be 50 minutes.
Ah.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe we need a break now.
You all are, everybody's tired already? I'm ashamed of you all. Hello. No, see, thumbs up, thumbs down, break now, no break now.
Yeah,
Feedback?
let us know. Do you guys want a break? No.
Terrence wants a break. Wow. Okay, people's coffee are empty. All right. Okay, apparently people want a break. Yes, okay. I am disappointed and hurt, but okay, we will have a
We'll
break
be
now.
back at 10:19. Do some brain and then we can do some brainstorming around what are some communication products we're familiar with, and move forward from there into platforms. So without further ado, I am going to start the video, which I have so neatly embedded into this. So the voice on the video is actually Melissa, who you guys would have met in previous sessions. You'll tell me about volume.
Welcome back to 7 Simple Steps to Small Scale Advocacy Action. I'm Melissa and I'll be your facilitator for this section. Welcome to Step 6, Spreading the News. Part 1, Understanding and Choosing the Right Communication Products. So in the last step, you did key messages. You learned how to craft effective key messages for your target audiences, and that is awesome. You are definitely going to need very strong messaging, but strong messaging on its own cannot be successful. You have to design it in a way that will be attractive and engaging for your audience and clearly communicate it. So how do you do that? You use communication products. So in this section, we're going to discuss what communication products are and why it's important to choose them wisely. So communication products is a term that you may not have heard, but very simply put, communication products are all the ways we use to communicate. So audio, video, telephone, email, printed documents, PowerPoint presentations, those are communication products. Now, they may seem inconsequential as we talk about it here, like, well, okay, that's just regular stuff that we do every day. That is true. But when you are doing a small scale advocacy action, you have to be very intentional about the communication.
As obviously the course we did before was on small scale advocacy, but everything that Melissa shares here is also relevant to your issue-based communication
products that you're using. Why is it important to choose your communication products wisely? This is mission critical for your advocacy action. Your communication products are where you engage or how you engage with your audience. You need to pick products and place them or use them in the correct ways so that your audience will want to engage with you. How do you choose effective communication products? This is not the time to start experimenting. When choosing communication products for your small scale advocacy action, you want to stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. Okay? If you've never used audio before, never used video before, now is not the time to experiment because you want to be well versed in the products that you're using. You want to be able to manipulate them and work with them to the best of your ability. So we always recommend reflecting on the products that you have access to, are familiar with, or have previously effectively used to engage members of your target audience. Stick to products that you know very well and have a low barrier to entry for both yourself and your audience. That means that it is easy for them. If you're targeting 75-year-olds, maybe email may not be your best mode of communication. You might want to use the phone. If you are communicating with teenagers, you definitely want to probably stay away from printed documents or things that require them to read for long periods of time, you want to engage them in maybe visual presentations like video or podcast, audio, something like that. So you need to think and be strategic as you plan which communication products you are going to use. When choosing communication products, you want to follow these steps. List 6 products you want to use for your advocacy action or campaign. On a scale from 1 to 10, rate your comfortability with, your ease of use, your knowledge of, and your access to each product. I would have said several times already, access. So even if you are well versed in audio production or video production and you don't have access to the equipment, that provides a barrier. As I said, you want to choose things that have a low barrier to entry. So use things that you have access to on a regular basis. Remove from your list any product that generated 50% or less on your rating scale, meaning an average of 10 or less out of 20, because you would have gone through each product on your list and given it a score up to 5, 5 being the highest. If it got less than 10 out of the 20 points you could have had for all of the products that you listed, then you need to remove it from the list because you either don't have access to it, aren't comfortable with it, or don't have the ease of use with it. And we are sticking to the rivers and the lakes that we're used to and the things that make our lives easier. Launching a small-scale advocacy plan can be difficult enough without overcomplicating it by trying to learn new communication products. Perhaps you might even want to consider the products that your partners are well-versed in. Okay, so you should be left with 3 products. In the event that you are left with 4 or more products, weed out any products that don't lend themselves to your vision for your advocacy action or that you don't have access to on a regular basis. Ideally, you should have at least 3 products. If you have less, you may want to consult with your partners to see what they can offer. So this is a great opportunity to leverage each other's strengths. If you are well versed in 1 to 2 products, but you need 1 more to really strengthen your advocacy campaign, now you're going to ask your partners, okay, what are the communication products that you're strongest in or have access to that we can use to bolster this campaign? So now we're all done. We have worked our way through choosing our communication products. Tell me, what are your communication products going to be?
So what are some of the communication products that we're familiar with, us in this room? Before I obviously, and I would have listed out some that I think we should all be familiar with, but I'd love to hear from you about some communication products you've used in the past. Janelle, is there anything in the chat? Oh, Brian says web pages. Yep, for sure. Hayden says SMS, WhatsApp, email, face-to-face. Nikolai says PA system. So actually, guys, these are what you guys are listing are communications platforms, and not products. So that tells me we do need to spend some time maybe talking about what actual communications products are. Newspaper is also a platform and not the actual product, Hayden, but you guys are ready for communications platforms. So let me go over with you a few communications products. Web pages, though, may be considered, the actual content of the page itself would be a product, but the website would be the platform. Does that make sense, Brian? Okay, so what are some communications products we're familiar with? Petitions, both online and offline, articles and columns, testimonies and firsthand accounts, participatory video and film, personal heartfelt letters and pleas, engaging simple video shorts, like talking head videos would be like a video of me doing this right now. Narrative story where someone is telling a story to engage others. It can be a real story or a fictional story. Those are some communications products. Now that I've given you guys those, are there any you can think of? Janelle is correct. Advertisements or advertisements are communication products. Can anyone think of any others? I have lots more examples if you can't, but would love to hear if that kind of jogged your memory or your thinking on it. Protests. Actually, Hayden, I'm glad you brought that up. The protest is not the product, but the placard is. And I think I have listed placard as a communication product on one of my slides. Other products look like audiograms or podcasts, news or media releases and advisories, GIS story maps and photo stories, advertisements like Janelle highlighted, animations and graphic imagery. Oh, sorry. Did I skip a slide? I know I had, yes. Okay, I knew placards was on here. So petitions and surveys are products. Nikolai. Petitions and surveys are the actual products because it's content you've developed to that shares your messaging, right? Or solicits information from people to communicate something to them. So right. Thank you, Brian. Yes. Web pages in general are a platform, but the actual content on a web page, like this one Brian has put in the chat, is a product, right? Blogs can be both a product and a platform. So, but I guess if you want to get down to the nitty gritty, the actual articles or the columns that and the information listed there are the product, and then the platform is the web page or website itself. Other communications products that we have delved into are songs and jingles, talking points, which is the information you take with you on interviews, or you provide to government representatives so that they can speak with more authority on a topic. Yes, leaflet is a product. The platform for like leaflets, pamphlets, flyers are like face-to-face meetings and community walkabouts where you give stuff like that out. In the first session, we had a lady, I can't remember her name right now, it's escaping me. She was advocating for door-to-door engagement with target audiences. And in that instance, you would use leaflets, pamphlets, flyers. You would use your talking points. placards, skits, dramas, letters to the editor. I think, was it Ian or Adrian who was working on I think it was Adrian working on a letter to the editor on Tuesday. Those are all communication products. And again, some of the other ones that we've already discussed are here. Billboard would be the platform, yes, and the ad on the billboard would be the product. Janelle. So I wanted to show you all a few examples of some products. I just quickly pulled some online products, but know that this is not meant to be wholly representative of products that you can create for your communication campaign. It's just a small sampling of online communications products that I had easy access to from the photos would be the product Hayden correct. Right.
Lived in Trinidad for 9 years. I moved here in October 2011 and was welcomed into the home of my aunt and uncle in Ascot Gardens in Karapo Village, a thriving community of mostly young families where my uncle and aunt are living out their retirement as the community elders of sorts. Imagine my horror in October 2018 when I was alerted that their beautiful home and community were subject to unprecedented flooding just months after a portion of the Aripo savannas had been deforested as a part of the highway project near to them. Two-story homes contending with water almost to their second levels and single-story homes with water almost to their roofs. Just tragic. I have to wonder, if we had Escazú and had proper consultations been done, would my family and so many others have experienced such trauma? I doubt it.
Okay, so that is an example of a product. It's an audiogram that it was part of Canari's If We Had Escazú public campaign that we did locally and regionally. I kicked off the campaign with my own personal story. I know my voice is a little low in that video, not sure what was going on there, but this is a clear example of a communications product. The platform it's on is Instagram, but the product is the audiogram using the images of, that's actually my aunt and uncle's home across the street, the yellow one, and their neighbors' homes submerged in water. And it was not too long after a portion of some savannas had been cut down in Trinidad, and then there was unprecedented flooding in that area. So, so that's one product. Let me stop share so I can go back and show you guys one or two more. So these are two examples also from the Escazú campaign, but these come out of the Jamaican, the mini campaign that was done in Jamaica as a result. So here is a like an animation that they did. What does environmental justice mean? It doesn't have any sound. It's just words and the image. And it pops up. They shared this across social media platforms and also shared it directly via email. So those were the platforms that they used for it. And then this video that they did with Danielle Andrade.
The Escazú Agreement is a treaty that was adopted in 2018, and it's a treaty between Latin America and the Caribbean. One of the reasons why environmental rights is so important for Jamaica is because we are a small island with finite resources, and many people are directly dependent on nature, on the environment for their livelihoods. Having an environment that is clean, that is healthy, that's productive is incredibly important for us.
Right. And so, as you can see, one campaign can utilize many different kinds of communications products to get the point across. Also, a few different platforms, and which ones you use all depends on who you're targeting.
The SSO agreement.
It all depends on who you're targeting and why you're targeting them and what their preferences are. Other examples of communications products that Canary did for this campaign were a GIS story map. So if you're unfamiliar, the GIS story map kind of lays out an issue, it neatly packages it. It can pull, you can use it to tell a story. So here we've pulled key messages from Caribbean citizens in a few of the different islands that participated in the Escazú Agreement campaign. We pulled their stories into a map. So here you see Ingrid Parchment from CCAM, and she told the story of the Goat Islands and how the government of the day had announced in China that they were going to develop a protected area in Jamaica. And then other stories coming out of the Canary team, and then other people networked within Trinidad and Tobago and throughout the Caribbean, sharing their stories. So it can be really cool. If you click on a point on the map, the story will come up, the pictures will come up. It's really good for sharing in a participatory way where people can feel like they're involved and part of it. They can click on their part of the world and see who else is doing work on the topic. So really, really interesting stuff with GIS story mapping. If you're not familiar though with the product and how to do it, I would suggest taking some time learning about GIS story mapping before working on something like this for your campaign. Yes, Natalie?
So, guys, I am trying to do a lot of different things in sequence that are relevant to each other. So as you all are aware, we did the feedback workshop on the second order draft of the NEA, information from which we are using in this communications workshop. I actually have another workshop starting, I think, on the 24th of November. You all are not the primary audience. The primary audience for that workshop is actually CYN, Caribbean Youth Environment Network. And that's linked to a livelihoods project we are running in some of the islands, where we're actually training the CYN folks on how to do knowledge products, including cell phone videos, photo stories, photo journals, GIS story maps, participatory video, participatory GIS. Now, exactly what Michelle said, please, you all probably won't be able to use these for this campaign because these are new products, but there is a link. And we have the training available if you are interested in these products to be able to get this training. So I know it's also overwhelming. It's one thing after the other, but we also will have recordings of those trainings. And I will be sending out an agenda on that sometime soon, this week or next week. So it's a follow-up activity that if you have time, you're welcome to participate and or use the recordings later on. But these will be new tools. And as Michelle said, we need to stick to trial and true for this. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is a very cool tool to know and understand. So if you can take Natalie up on her offer, I suggest you do. This was another audiogram that is Ingrid Parchment talking about the issue of the the issue that Jamaica had with the Goat Islands.
The previous government went to China a few years ago and announced that there was going to be a port development at the Goat Islands. The Goat Islands are islands within the Portland Bight Protected Area, which is an area that was agreed by academia, general public, etc. And that was set up in 1998. That activities within that area must fall within what is allowable. So you have to go through a certain process for decisions to be made.
Right. That procedure was not followed. And a few civil society organizations got together and took action to hold the government accountable for not following said procedures. And they won, and the government had to stop any planned development in the Goat Islands.
The previous government went to China a few years ago.
I'm trying to get to the next slide, sorry. Before I move on to the next slide and video, I want to find out, do we all now have a clearer sense of what communication products are? Do you have any questions about communications products before we move on to communications platforms? Hayden said we're good to go. Terrence said it was very clear. Okay, so if everyone is clear, then we'll move forward. So this is another short video. It's about communications platforms. I'll clear up any, we'll do the same thing, same kind of brainstorm and chat after we watch this, yes? Just be mindful that in this video we say pathways, but for the purposes of this course, I prefer the term platform.
Hi there, and welcome back to step 6 of the 7 simple steps to small-scale advocacy action, spreading the news. And now we are on to part 2, understanding and choosing the right communication pathways. Now, in the last video, we talked about communication products. And communication products are how we are designing our messages to meet our target audiences. And in this video, we are going to focus on how we are going to disseminate those messages. So we're going to talk about what communication pathways are and why it's important to choose them wisely. Now, communication pathways are simply the methods in which we release our messages into the world. For example, radio, social media, television, and newspaper are all communication pathways. It's important to choose your communication pathways wisely because your communication pathways are where you're meeting your target audience. You want your message to be accessible to the audience that you're targeting. So you have to be mindful of what pathways or platforms you're using to do so. When doing this type of training, we like to use the idiom, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? We want our advocacy actions to make all the noise. We want our target audiences to hear us. And in order for that to happen, we have to be in the same vicinity as them. So that means if you're targeting a 35-year-old mom like myself, you're not going to go looking for me on TikTok. You're not going to be posting your messages on TikTok because 35-year-old moms don't generally hang out on TikTok, right? I'm of the Facebook generation. So we all came of age when Facebook was new in 2004 and it was released on college campuses. And I've had a Facebook account ever since. Most people that I know that are my age have had a Facebook account since 2004. So that would be a wise place to engage with me if social media was the pathway that you wanted to choose. You need to make sure that whatever you choose, that it aligns with the audience you're looking for. If you are looking for 85-year-olds, social media may not be where you want to target them. You may need to do a phone campaign. You may need to take out ads in the newspaper. So you need to think strategically about who you are targeting and where you have engaged with them. That brings us to how we effectively choose communication pathways, right? So communication pathways, as we said before, are based on who your audience is. You want to go to the places where your audience is hanging out. And I mean that in a communication sense, right? Are they reading newspapers? Are they listening to the radio? Are they watching TV on a regular basis? You need to meet them where they are. When choosing communication pathways, consider the following things: who your audience is, which we already talked about, and where have you primarily engaged with them in the past. Although we discussed this before, I want you to really stop, take a minute, and sit with this. Who is your audience? Think back to when you did your target audiences. Think of one of your audiences. Where have you engaged with them in the past? Have you engaged with them in the past? Where might you find them if you haven't engaged with them in the past? So think through who they are and where they're likely to be in a communication sense. Number 2, who are your contacts? Do you have direct access to certain pathways? When we say contacts, we're talking about influencers. Who are the people that are influencing the target audience that you want to influence? And do you have access to them? Do you have direct access to them through phone numbers and through personal relationships? Do you have friends who are connected to the people that you want to connect with or contact, as they are the gatekeepers for the pathways that you're trying to get into? And this is particularly relevant if you're talking about television, if you are talking about radio, if you're talking about podcasts. There are specific people who are well connected in those spaces. And generally, if you want to get into those spaces, you have to know someone. So that is what we're talking about when we're talking about your contacts. Who in your network is influencing the people that you want to get in contact with? Number 3, if you're cultivating a new audience, you should be experimenting with new pathways. I know in the products video, I said, do not experiment with new products. And the difference is that the products are the tools that you're using, right? And you must know how to use your tools in order to build something that is going to sustain itself. But the pathways are where you're going to find people. It is how you release the information into the world. And if you've never worked with a particular audience before, you may not know where to meet them. So it helps if you experiment a little bit. Maybe you take a newspaper ad and run a social media ad at the same time. Maybe you start posting consistently in specific places to see what the reaction is. You allow yourself to insert yourself in new spaces with the hopes that the people, the educated guess that the people that you're looking for are going to be there. So you don't do this blindly. You're researching those pathways and the people who are likely to use them. And if that aligns with the people that you're looking for, then you are testing it out. When choosing communication pathways, follow these steps. List yourself and all of your partners for your advocacy action campaign, as well as everyone's preferred pathways, contacts, and access to pathways. So you're literally making a list of everybody you know and relationships you can leverage, plus that of your partners. Now you're going to assess your list and of pathways, and you're going to break it up by having pros and cons for each. So ideally, the pros would mean that you have easy access to it. It's a lower barrier to entry for you or your audience, and you have a proven track record of engaging with your audience there, or you know that your audience frequents that space and you can engage with them there. For example, if radio is on your list, and you are friends with a radio announcer or you work at the radio station, then you know you have easy access and there's a low barrier to entry for you. If your audience are people who listen to the radio, then you know that they are already there, right? So that is a proven track record and easy access. So cons would be that you have little or unreliable access to something. So let's say you want to do TV and you know a TV producer, but you talk to them sporadically over the year, and sometimes they can help you and sometimes they can't, and more likely than not, they won't be able to help you. That is a con, right? So you don't want to maybe move forward with that pathway because you're not sure that you're going to get the results that you want. So this is what we do. You remove them from your list. You remove that pathway because it has too many cons. Note that when working with a new audience, inexperience with a particular pathway is not in of itself a con. What it requires is research. A lack of access to a new pathway is a barrier, right? So a lack of access is defined by a lack of a human resource, a monetary resource, or otherwise. So if you can't buy your way into the space, if you don't know anyone that can open the gates. Hi there, and welcome back to step 6 of the 7 simple steps to small scale. Note that when working with a new audience, inexperience with a particular pathway is not in of itself a con. What it requires is research. A lack of access to a new pathway is a barrier, right? So a lack of access is defined by a lack of a human resource, a monetary resource, or otherwise. So if you can't buy your way into the space, if you don't know anyone that can open the gates for you and let you into the space, or you have no other way of attaining access to that pathway, that's a hard stop. So as you dwindled your list down, you should still keep in mind that you want to use as many pathways as you can to comfortably access your target audience. Dissemination is a tricky thing. You have executed excellent key messages and designed it wonderfully, but if I'm not meeting you where you are, if you are not looking for your audience in a number of spaces, you may be missing opportunities. So if your target audience is me, a 35-year-old mom, and I see you on a commercial for my favorite TV show, and then I hear you on my favorite podcast, and then I see you on Facebook, now you've intrigued me. We have met in several different spaces, and that recurring interaction builds trust, and it increases the opportunity that you have to convince me of why I should support your cause. So now that we have successfully decided what our products and pathways will be, how are you going to measure your impact?
So what are some platforms we're familiar with? We already went through this. We listed quite a few when we were trying to get at products. So I won't belabor the point too much. Some some platforms that we're familiar with: face-to-face, one-on-one meetings, TV or online media appearances, workshops and training events, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Discord, Clubhouse. So can anyone tell me what is the difference between the social media platforms I have grouped and the way I've grouped them? Does anyone recognize that there's a difference there? Sorry, putting my video on now.
A demographic difference, Nisha?
Definitely a demographic difference. Terrence, thank you for sharing that. Also, the age of the platform, not just the people who engage on it, right? Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, even Instagram being the baby, bringing up the rear. Yes, age demographic for sure, Dylan, as well. But Instagram bringing up the rear, those are the longest standing social media channels, right? And then we have the newbies in a separate bubble: TikTok, Snapchat, Discord, Clubhouse. Not only is the age demographic different, but they are considerably different in preference, correct, Dylan, in the way that people engage with them, in how much, like you will find like on Facebook, Instagram, even Twitter and LinkedIn, it's designed for you to spend long periods of time engaging with specific content, whereas TikTok, Snapchat, Discord, Clubhouse are all kind of designed in a way for you to engage with a specific thing for a specific amount of time and no longer, right? So you're taking in lots of content, but maybe in short bursts, whereas Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram are a little bit different. Even though Twitter is short in terms of how much you can communicate in one tweet, people generally engage in conversations and threads via their tweets, so you tend to engage a little bit longer. Some other communications platforms are newspapers and radio stations, which are more traditional media that has been long-standing. Some of the ones that we may not always think about, but are indeed useful platforms for our communication products, are art exhibits and community talent shows, community walkabouts, online events, gatherings, discussion forums, blogs, videos, printed newsletters and e-newsletters, which go out, which are messaging on vehicles. Yes, absolutely. Vehicles can be a platform. Roadside demonstrations, face-to-face community and town hall meetings. Thank you, Hayden, for that. Any other platforms that you're familiar with or have used that I haven't touched on? No? Okay, so I just wanted to go back to our example, the case study we've been using, which has been the Escazú campaign. And for that campaign, we used a bunch of different platforms to communicate our messaging: Instagram, Facebook, direct email, direct and personalized email, I should say, right? Naming people by name and making it feel as though they were the only person who got the email. Online or virtual events via Zoom, community workshops, hybrid panel events, both in person and virtual, media appearances, TV and radio. And in this case, sometimes, at least locally, I'm not sure if the same is true of Grenada, but in Trinidad, radio appearances are just like being on TV because they're filming it and streaming it. So media appearances in TV and radio, direct mail, letters, newspaper. So we use quite a few platforms to get the messaging out because we were trying to do exactly what Melissa referenced in the video, which is meet our target audiences in a few different places. So the message is coming from them at all angles and hitting them at different points of reception, if that makes sense. So if I get a message at a community walkabout, right, from a neighbor, I'm going to receive it one way. If I then am watching TV and I hear the same message, it is going to hit me in a different place. You know, t-shirt celebrity endorsement or a local influencer endorsement, which is a little bit different, are some of the things that Hayden references in the chat that are absolutely platforms that can be used. Yeah, so if you receive messaging in different places that you are open to receiving messaging, getting the same message once, twice, 3 times, 4 times really does help with you building trust in whoever is delivering the message and saying to yourself, maybe there is something to this. Maybe I should consider what they're saying. Maybe I should, you know, learn more or take action on this. So on that point, we want to break out into our small groups to discuss our campaigns, and what we want to focus on are what products will our target audiences respond to best? How do they prefer to be reached? Who and what influences them, which we should have talked about a little bit already. How can we reach them in multiple ways, and what platforms are they already using? Yes, Natalie, go ahead.
And did you address Hayden's comment about multiple or joint products or collaborating across platforms?
Oh, I actually did not see it. Thank you. Just noting, I did not see references to collaborating or joint for. No, I mean, it was kind of in the subtext, Hayden, but no, it was not explicitly said. But you are right that we should also be considering who can we partner with, who is, well, actually, I think Melissa did say it, right? Who are we connected to that's connected to who we want to influence, and how can we collaborate with them to develop products, right? And also to disseminate platforms. I think what was said in the video is if you do not have access to a platform, who amongst your partners do, right? Because it's implied and understood a lot in our work that we have to work together in order to get the results that we're looking for. And so that's a good point to call out. Any other questions, concerns, challenges before we go into breakout rooms? If not, Anastasia, you can put us into breakout rooms. So this time you all can share with us how the discussion went in your group and what communications products and platforms you decided to pursue. Who's talking for your group? Is it Aditi?
Aditi, yeah, Aditi is
okay.
good.
Go ahead, Aditi.
Hi, everyone. Confirming you could see the screen?
Yes.
All right, so products and platforms for our first target, which is minister government. So the products that we identified were formal means, so letters through the PS, one pages, video clips as well. We also had the idea of maybe inviting them to mangrove tours, walkabout with community groups. We had a discussion how ministers, government representatives may like to be reached, and their preference was indicated for online or electronic communications. It was noted that sometimes ministers and assistants, they tend to listen in to town hall meetings and talk shows, so those were identified as possible platforms. And also the importance of informal communications and outreach. So it's a small island, and also to soften the impact, to get that avenue, that leeway to leverage relationships, etc. Who and what influences the government representatives the most? Ministers, so assistants, PS, also the importance of religious leaders in the roles of the ministers' lives, government representatives' life, and how can we reach them in multiple ways? So it was noted that if we come with eloquent messaging to government representatives versus anti-government, anti-development critiquing, it would have a better impact. So we come with proper research, well-crafted messaging needed to respond to whatever the issue is. For example, at town hall meetings with developers, so we have a greater impact. Our points of view are heard in such a forum. And the platforms that we that they are already using and that we can leverage: talk shows for the ministers, Facebook, given the age demographic, emails, constituency days, and town hall meetings. So our preference would be for the formal communications for the ministers via email. And our second target group, which is community groups. Our products will be mostly community announcements, online flyers, and the preference would be through informal means of communications through various events. Again, the importance of religious leaders in the roles of community members' lives was identified. And the platforms that listed here: PA systems, door-to-door, town hall meetings, community group meetings, informal events, sports, cultural events, religious events, and the importance of meeting people where they are. So recognizing that baysides and popular shops are important for fishers. Facebook stream and radio was also highlighted as being important. Again, the primary product we identified for community groups or announcements, primary platform, radio. And that's just a quick summary of our discussion. And Natalie can add anything if I forgot, but I'll pass it back to you.
No, I think we're fine unless anybody else in the group wants to add something. No? So over to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Natalie. I'm going to turn it over to Crystal to fill the group in on our discussion about products and platforms, which was really quite enlightening and interesting. So go ahead, Crystal.
Yes. So we started off by, looking at what products our audience, discussing what products our audience would respond to best. And we noted that some of the target audience would likely have a lower literacy levels. So we need to be sensitive about what we say and how we say it. And we discussed what would make them more receptive. So for one, we can provide food when interacting with the target groups to create that sort of environment of community and sharing. We can look at rum shops that the pushers would frequent and note that they may not respond to anything literate. So we can take the approach of drip feeding talking points for persons helping to run the campaign, such as, rum shop owners and the supervisors of the crew, so they can aid in sharing the messages with the target audience. We can then look at organizing meetings that are held before they go out to work. We can have cleanup campaigns just before the program starts, as well as formal meetings with them to start to sort of set the context and to begin sharing some of the initial messages and, build on those messages as the campaign go along, check in to see how it's being implemented, etc. We can look at usage of the post office, since the target groups typically go to the post office to collect their bills. And we can use the district disaster committee members to help aid in sharing the messages. Some of our products that we identified would have been, key talking points. So using more of a verbal way of getting the messages across, which would include face-to-face meetings, community meetings with the leaders and influencers within the target communities, and ensure that these people are, within the ranks of the crews. So they would relate to them and, they would see them as, advocates and champions. We also identified that we can use for like the rum shops, we can use notices, have the proprietors share information via word of mouth, stickers and posters. This kind of goes back to the point that some of them may not be as literate or willing to read very wordy advertisements or posters or whatever. So ensure that it is, very picture heavy. We can use, you need to use limited text and, use photos that show what cutting too low would look like and what flooding looks like. So we, have that impact and draw in their attention. We also identified that moving signage could be another product that we could use. And we'll have it moving from community to community so different groups can see the message. And these can include like a sort of installation art type of situation that has a message on it, or one person indicated that we can, utilize, a vehicle parked in different places, that there are now these vehicles with the billboards at the side. And we can possibly make it an event to move the sign from community to community to help garner attention. This approach kind of prevents the message from being too stale in terms of like having a permanent installation, and prevents it from becoming too familiar to the community and that they stop paying attention to it. So I think that was just about everything. Michelle, please let me know if I missed anything from our discussion.
I think you captured everything. Hayden, Ian, Janelle, Luana, did we miss anything there?
I think that summed it up admirably.
Great. So yeah, lots of more in it. We really focused in on the fact that our targets, specifically the supervisor and crew targets, may not be as literate as our other target audiences, and so really wanted to make sure that whatever we developed would be easily accessible and received by them. And I think we did a pretty good job of that. Any feedback from our group to the Mangrove group on the products that they developed, or vice versa? Anybody had any thoughts on what was just shared from the group that you were not in? No?
Yeah, forgive me butting in again.
Go ahead.
We had thought of using churches. Our problem with accessing churches is that they tend to be only available on Sundays. And we wondered if anybody could advise us on possibly contacting them centrally via the Conference of Churches or some such administrative organizational group.
So if anyone was in the Mangrove group who has those ties, perhaps we can share that with Ian offline. For now, thank you, Ian, for asking that question and letting us know that it's something that you have been thinking about on campaigns in the past.
In terms of the Conference of Churches, I know somebody who works at the office.
Oh, awesome. So maybe you can connect with Ian, Joseph, and you guys can share information if you feel comfortable doing so. I think everyone did a great, thank you, Joseph. I think everyone did a great job in developing ideas for products and platforms that can be used in these strategies. We did want, sorry, in these campaigns, we did want to do some work around M&E today, but we're out of time. And so we will open the next session reviewing the tools that are available to us on monitoring and evaluation. I will walk you through them and a few strategies so that we can decide what we'll do in terms of M&E, and then we can move forward to working on building our communications teams or using the teams that we have available to us in the best way possible. So on that note, unless you would have any notes for the group, Natalie. Oh, M&E, not M&E, M&E, monitoring and evaluation, Ian. I think it's my accent that's tying you up. So any notes you have for the group, Natalie, before we go into our feelings checkout?
Just to say we have 2 more sessions next week. And again, I know this is a lot of work, guys, but I think we are making some good progress, both in terms of the specific communication strategies we want to develop and try to implement next year, and also just in terms of general learning. So we encourage you to continue to participate next week. As I said, I know it's a lot, but we really appreciate your time and commitment. That's it from me.
Thank you, Natalie. Just a quick reminder to everyone to, if you haven't already, to access Thinkific. If you cannot access Thinkific, I think Ian was having some difficulty, and Joseph, we will send you the necessary information if you're unable to get on the platform. And if you have the need or must miss a session, let us know if you can't access Thinkific so we can get the information to you. I want to thank everyone for joining, and just take some time now to get a pulse on how we're feeling now at the end of day 4 of the class. Feel free to unmute and share, or share in the chat. Not everybody all at once. Oh, Terrence gave us a hand clap. Thank you, Terrence. Anyone else want to share where you are now? Hayden said it's a lot to handle. He's feeling a little overwhelmed, and that is totally understandable. Ian says 1 step closer to know we're doing the right thing in the right way. Nice. Anybody else? If not, oh, Hayden says, but happy to know these things will materialize. Brian says, there's a lot of uncertainty in what communication will work. We're seeing that and doing our best. Absolutely. And sometimes it is just a matter with these campaigns. I don't want you guys to feel like it's just you, right? In communications campaigns across the board, right, there is a little bit of trial and error, right, and pivoting and redirection based on the reception that you're getting. So it's not you, you just have to be open to pivoting and really following what your M&E metrics are telling you so that you can be more effective. It is not helpful to just say, well, this is what we said we're going to do, so we're going to stick to this, even if you see it's not working or having the desired effect. Hadassah has said, it's been most informative and the discussions are great reminders to put into practice. Janelle shares greater clarity on developing message, campaign, target audience, etc. Elena says it's a learning experience. Thank you all for sharing so openly. If you have any questions or concerns or challenges, feel free to email myself or DT or Natalie. If you if you feel more comfortable directing it to Natalie. We look forward to seeing you on Tuesday. And as Natalie said, we know it's a lot to take in. That's why we're making the information available to you even after session. I'll be sure to update the Thinkific with the live recordings and all the materials available, and to email it to those who I promised who have had trouble accessing. Right. So until we see you on Tuesday, stay well.